Hello there, everybody! Tekking, Barry, and Porygon here today to wish you all a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday Winter Festival season on this December 25th. So what am I doing here? Like, Tekking, shouldn't you be off celebrating Christmas? I'm like, yeah. I'll get around to it. I don't know what to tell you. Growing up, we always celebrated on January 7th. My mom's family is Ukrainian Orthodox. To me, it's weird that everybody else celebrates it on December 25th because it's just this weird, comparison thing I had growing up. It was actually pretty cool because I got out of school for like the normal Christmas, December 25th, and I also got out of Christmas on, January 7th as well. So, it worked out great for me. I don't know. But, yeah, even to this day, it feels weird to celebrate it on December 25th. So, yeah. Anyway, I thought, okay, let's just talk about One Piece then. Why not? Happy Yuletide holiday season. Also, by the way, here's a fun little One Piece trivia fact for you. Sabo is actually based off of a character from Oliver Twist. I believe the character Dodger. And the funny thing is, like, when I was preparing for this video and I remembered that fact, I was like, Oliver Twist is a Christmas story. And it's been a long time since I've read Oliver Twist. I think I read it in like 4th or 5th grade, but as I started to think about it more and I went back and checked, I don't think Oliver Twist is like an overtly Christmas story. The thing is, it was written by Charles Dickens, who like single-handedly revived Christmas in Europe. Like, he was very influential in like bringing a lot of the Christmas traditions that we take for granted today. Like, it really didn't start until Charles Dickens, okay? Like, there were a couple things beforehand, like from other winter festivals, but he really popularized it with A Christmas Carol and a bunch of his other Christmas stories that he wrote. Charles Dickens did not write a Christmas story, but he wrote a lot of stories about Christmas, okay? And it was like in the cultural zeitgeist and everything. But I don't think Oliver Twist is one of those. It might just be because Charles Dickens wrote it, but whatever. Anyway, I'm getting off the rails here. Today, we're going to be talking about a merry gentleman arriving to Egghead Island and bringing joy and happiness and an array of laser beams on everybody there. Today, we're talking about Papa Kizaru coming to town. All right, so let me just start this off by saying this, okay? You know how a couple of chapters ago when, Lucci got on Egghead and then Luffy's running around and everyone's like, oh my god, Lucci and Luffy are gonna fight. And then at the end of that one chapter, Lucci and Luffy, they see each other, they cross paths, and it's like, you're the pigeon guy, you're Monkey D. Luffy. And it's like, oh man, here we go, here comes the rematch. And like every single person was like, Luffy's gonna stomp Lucci. Like, it's not even going to be a contest, okay? And then I'm over here in my little corner being like, well, maybe Lucci might kind of, hold a candle. I mean, my thing that I was focusing on was like, hey guys, Lucci awakened his devil fruit. He's going to be really, really fast. He might be able to outspeed Luffy. You never know. The awakened leopard zone. We'll see what happens. Okay, so Luffy completely dominated Lucci. However, one thing I wanted to note was in the last chapter 1070, after Luffy, like, knocks him out. Like, Lucci does lose consciousness, but he comes right back, and we see him at the end of the chapter. He's back in his human form. He only has, like, a couple of bandages on him, and it's like, okay, he was able to take a pretty decent beating from Gear 5th, and he didn't get knocked into a coma like he did with Gear 2nd and 3rd back at Enies Lobby, right? And so that's an improvement, and a lot of people brought up, that's probably because we already know Awakened Zones have an increase of regeneration, like healing ability. We saw that with the Demon Guards at Impel Down, where after, Minotauros was defeated by that combo attack with Luffy and Mr. 3 and Buggy and everybody, he was able to come right back. Same thing with the other Demon Guards. Crocodile even specified this during Impel Down, where the Demon Guards were coming back, and Mr. 2 Bon Clay was like, I thought we already beat them all, and Crocodile was like, wouldn't really matter much if you did. They're high on Christmas spirit and steroids, I guess. I don't know. But when you awaken your zone, you heal a lot faster. So that's probably the reason that Lucci, even though he got beaten into submission and lost consciousness with Luffy's Gear 5th, he was able to pretty much just, like, I'm sure Kaku walked over and like, Lucci, wake up! And he just like, what? Okay, and he just got back up and he was relatively fine and his wounds are healing pretty quick. But, yeah, Luffy was pretty much able to stomp Lucci into the ground, no issue there. But, on the heels of that, if we're talking about speed, all right,
All right, Gear 5th Luffy was able to outspeed the Awakened Leopard Zone. All right, let's see if he can outspeed Kizaru. Let's stress test this to the max. We're going there, okay? Kizaru's Devil Fruit is regarded by many to be one of the most absolutely powerful broken abilities in this entire story, and he's the fastest character in One Piece. Like, it's not even debatable, okay? Now, with that being said, it is still possible to fight Kizaru, and that leads to a whole other can of worms that I'm not even sure I want to go into here with, like, okay, can Kizaru actually move at light speed? Because a lot of people are, like, instantly like, yes, of course, Kizaru can move at light speed. He has the damn light Logia. I'm like, yes, that's true, but if Kizaru could legitimately move at light speed, like, no character should be able to fight him. Like, nobody. It doesn't matter. Roger, Rayleigh, Shiki, Whitebeard in his prime. Like, if Kizaru can legitimately move at light speed, I don't care if you got future sight hockey. I don't care if you got what. Like, he would just be able to... dead. Not even faster than what I just did. Like, within a second of a second of a second of this, Kizaru should be able to solo, like, the entire Straw Hat Pirates if he can move that fast, okay? So then you start getting into whole debates about, like, actual speed versus reaction speed, you know, like, okay, Kizaru can turn into light, but then Rayleigh was able to block his attack, so, you know, maybe Rayleigh's reaction time was faster than Kizaru. Also, you gotta really understand that Kizaru is a relatively slow-moving kind of guy. You know, he takes his time with stuff, okay? When he has to get the job done, he moves quick, but a lot of times, I mean, there's a reason why there's the joke that Kizaru is high all the damn time, okay? Which he probably most likely is. So, that's a funny thing that, a lot of the Admirals kind of follow, and actually I think all of them actually follow in that regard. If you look at how the Admirals' like personalities are compared to their Devil Fruit powers, they're opposites. And I think this is true with all of them. So in the case with Aokiji, you know, he has a cold Devil Fruit, the Hiei no Mi, but his personality is not cold or frigid. He's actually a very understanding kind of individual that really cares about morals and things like that. Meanwhile, you have Akainu, who has this really warm and hot Devil Fruit, but also is very stern and cold toward others, okay? You have Fujitori's, the Zushi no Mi, that allows him to manipulate gravity to make everybody, like, bow down before him. You would imagine this is a very oppressive power, like, bow before me, masses! But Fujitora is not like that at all. He's the one that actually bows down to King Riku Dole III after Dressrosa because he was going to apologize for the Marines not being able to save their country and for it to being saved by pirates, okay? We have Aramaki, who has the Mori no Mi, a fruit that's all about life and creating forests and plants and trees in the desolate wastelands of Wano. And he's this extraordinarily prejudiced individual that feels that, like, no, the Tenryubito are the gods of this world. They manipulate and control you all. That's the law of the universe. That's the way it should be, and that's the way it should stay. You're not allied with the world government, then you don't have any rights. Like that is essentially Aramaki's viewpoint here. And so with Kizaru, though, the interesting twist on his Devil Fruit ability is he's really wicked fast, but, you know, he's like, hey, man, just calm down a bit. Let's not go into crazy action mode. Let's just hang out here and smoke a little something. It's the holidays, you know? So that honestly might be the little bit of a handicap for Kizaru. It's not just like a funny little quirky thing. It's just that it's like he's like, oh, I could move at the speed of light and wipe out all of the Straw Hats at once, but, you know, that's not cool, man. That's not how you do things. You know, okay, but anyway, getting off topic for that for a moment, because we can have that debate for the end of time. That's not really what this video is about, to debate, like, Kizaru's top speed or, you know, how he could literally bend the laws of reality using his power. It's more about, okay, Kizaru is arriving at Egghead with a massive fleet of ships, all right? So, first and foremost, honestly, the Straw Hats should just take Vegapunk and leave. Like, right? Like, I'm not wrong on that, right? Like, the smart thing to do in this instance, the entire island is swarming with Cypher Pole agents. Lucci, Kaku, Stussy are there. They are now in control of the Seraphim, S-Bear, S-Snake, S-Hawk, and S-Shark. On top of that, the entire island is about to be surrounded by an entire fleet. Like, you heard Kizaru in the last chapter. Bring every warship you can manage, okay? Plus, Kizaru himself, one of the High Admirals of the Navy, High Admirals, is there as well. So the smart thing would do, Vegapunk definitely has some kind of escape pod, right? He's Vegapunk, for God's sake. You know for a fact up there in the Labosphere, and flying machines don't really exist in the One Piece world all that much, okay? There are a few that are out there, like Admirals, Maxim and the Flying Fish Riders have the Flying Fish, although those aren't machines, those are actually fish. But I'm telling you what, like, if anybody's gonna have a straight-up rocket escape pod, it's gonna be Vegapunk, and it's probably gonna be in the Labosphere. So the smart thing would be, as soon as Luffy and his group with, like, Chopper and Jinbei and Bonnie meet up with Vegapunk and everybody, and the Straw Hats are all there in the lab, and then Zoro and Brook are there as well. I don't know, they get the Sunny equipped with like a giant rocket booster and just like, all right, everybody, Quasar, here we go, and they just like rocket off away from Egghead Island. And if they were to do that, the only person that would be able to follow them would be Kizaru. All right, that's the thing. Kizaru can move super fast. Okay, even if you want to say light speed, he can fly. He can follow them wherever they go, okay? But the entire island is being surrounded by a bunch of Marines, like thousands of Marines, dozens of battleships, Cypher Pole Zero's there. So if you're going to escape, you're just going to go, okay? And that was the whole point of them being on Egghead, is like Vegapunk wants them to, take him away from the island, okay? And that's what Sentomaru also told Luffy. So remember, Sentomaru's like last request to Luffy was, get old man Vegapunk off this island, get him to safety, and then Luffy went. All right, so I don't know if that's like how this arc is going to wrap up relatively quickly. Maybe there might be a brief exchange with Kizaru to really showcase how stronger the Straw Hats have become, because this is it right now. I mean, Kaido is gone. Big Mom's still in the hole. The hole is beginning to bend a little bit there. I think the reality around the hole is beginning to warp. But anyway, yeah, the Yonko have been defeated at this point. So now, like, what other really strong characters in One Piece do we have left? I mean, yeah, we have Shanks. Yeah, we have Blackbeard and his entire crew. That's going to be an issue. But mainly, we just have the Admirals. Honestly, unless like Rocksteady Zebek comes back or Wang Zhi makes an appearance, Silver Axe comes back, Shiki's there all of a sudden, Whitebeard comes back as a zombie, those giant things at the Florian Triangle, they show up like they're enemies now. Zunisha turns evil. I don't know. Like, how many other really strong... Eneru comes back with Uranos, and an entire army of automata. Maybe they get in the rocket at Egghead and they blast off to the moon. That's Vegapunk's escape strategy. Like, Kizaru won't follow us to the moon. Let's go! And they land on the moon, and then Eneru pops out eating an apple, and he's just like, get off my property. And everyone's like, oh, wait, I remember you. And then we can have Luffy, Gear 5th, versus Eneru again.
That's the smart thing to do, but it is Luffy, and it is the Straw Hats, so I'm not sure if that's what they're going to do. If they're going to be like, hey, man, it seems kind of, it's not cool to just, like, escape, like we're running away, like we're retreating here, okay? Because the Straw Hats don't really do that all that much. The only other time they did that, actually, this would be a cool little parallel, was during Sabaody. That was one of the few instances in the story where Luffy gave a captain's order, exercising his actual authority as a captain, like, which, Luffy does not do all that often in a serious manner. He's like, guys, we can't win this one. They got an admiral. They got this Sentomaru guy that's using haki. Luffy can't use haki. He can't control it at that point. They got they got Kuma there. They got a pacifista there. Luffy's like, we can't beat these guys. We can't win. We got to retreat. Meet back here, in 3 days, and it eventually turned into 2 years, okay? So that's the way that things went down at Sabaody, and this arc has a lot of parallels to Sabaody. Sentomaru is here, then we have Kizaru showing up and everything like that, so a lot of parallels to that. So we could have that kind of a redone version of that where Luffy's like, we're not going to retreat, we can actually fight this time, all right? And, like, seriously, Luffy versus Kizaru, Kizaru is still faster, because he's literally light. Like, he's the fastest character in all of One Piece, pretty much. But, like, I kind of want to see this, you know what I mean? I want to see Luffy go up against Kizaru. Just Luffy 1v1 an Admiral and see how far he can get. All right, I'm not really sure. I don't know. I really don't know. Like, I could see this fight going either way. That's not the focus of this, to just do a whole, like, Luffy versus Kizaru, because we don't even know if that's going to happen. If it's revealed and it's looking like that's going to happen where Luffy is interested in fighting Kizaru, because Luffy's never even fought Kizaru before. Not directly, not like, Kizaru and Luffy have, like, some weird grudge against one another. If anything, Luffy would have a grudge against Akainu, and he sort of does. I mean, well, okay, obviously he killed Ace, but, like, remember
back at Fishman Island when Jinbei was talking about how, you know, Akainu and Aokiji fought, and then they, you know, Akainu became the new fleet admiral. There was that moment where Luffy grabbed his scar, and he was like, Akainu! You know, so that's what I mean. Obviously, Akainu killed Ace, so he would have a grudge against him, but, like, as a specific moment in the story where Luffy expressed his disdain or, like, a grudge or wanting to take revenge against Akainu, that was probably the closest moment right there, where after Jinbei told him, Akainu is now Sakazuki's the new fleet admiral of the Marines, and Luffy grabs his scar and he's like, ugh. So yeah, he would be the admiral Luffy would want to fight above all else. Kizaru, on the other hand, Luffy might want to fight Kizaru just for the fact of, like, hey, Kizaru's really strong. He was able to, he almost defeated all of us. You know, he attacked Zoro during Sabaody. You know, I want to fight against him, you know, to get him back for that and everything. But Luffy, would Luffy be smart enough to know in this instance, or at least be aware enough that, like, hey, even with my new ability, even with Gear 5th, this guy's not going to go down easy, okay? Like, going back to Kaido again, once again, Luffy did not go into Gear 5th and beat Kaido in, like, one attack, okay? It was still a very hard-fought battle, okay? Yeah, he was pretty much dominating Lucci there, but, you know, right after that fight, he, you know, shriveled up and everything. He lost power. I mean, Gear 5th clearly has a time limit. He can go back into it if he wants, but I imagine every time he goes back into it, he can't just keep doing that forever. So, Luffy might be aware, or maybe, you know, Vegapunk or one of the other Straw Hats like Zoro or somebody will tell him, Robin's there, like, Luffy, you're not going to be able to, like, hey, listen, you might be able to beat Kizaru. I mean, you're really strong right now. You beat Kaido, so pretty much, like, anybody's on the table right now. If you want to say Luffy could beat an admiral, I think that's fair at this point. If you want to say Luffy could beat Blackbeard, also fair at this point. Luffy could beat Shanks. Okay, we'll table that one for later. But certainly, Luffy against an admiral has a fairly good shake, I think. I mean, the Admiral might still win, but, like, you know, the Strats might be like, yeah, you might be able to win, but the case in point here, it's not going to be a quick battle. It's not going to be just like Luffy, couple of attacks, takes down Kizaru, no big deal, and then they're scot-free, they can just escape, okay? And meanwhile, while that's happening, if Luffy were to go fight Kizaru in a straight-up battle, we have all these Marines swarming the island. I mean, there's innocent civilians and researchers and scientists on the island. You know, more of Vegapunk's satellites might be destroyed in the process, and so maybe it might just be smart just to leave, and then if Kizaru chases after them, Luffy jumps out of the rocket, and then we have this awesome fight on top of a rocket ship where Luffy's fighting against Kizaru, which, by the way, that's the whole point of Luffy's Devil Fruit, by the way. He can fight wherever. He can fight in whatever way he wants, okay? I mentioned this in the last chapter, but I didn't mention it as it happened. So when Luffy was, like, doing that wrestling move against Lucci, he reaches into his hair, his, like, cloud afro that he's made because of Gear 5th, and he pulls out, like, goggles. He molds his hair into the shape of goggles and then puts them on, and then he attacks. I didn't mention that when he first used it. I think I mentioned it later in the review, but a lot of people in the comments, because I missed it the first time, were like, Tekking, didn't you not see that Luffy can, like, manifest matter? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, that doesn't surprise me because we've already seen Luffy can fight however he wants. If Luffy reaches into his hair and pulls out a giant hammer out of hammer space, I'd be like, yeah, that tracks, sure. Yeah, now there are certain limitations with this that I would find ridiculous. Like, let's say, for example, Kizaru takes a bunch of lasers, or maybe a light sword, because Kizaru has a light sword, and, like, slices Luffy up into, like, 30 different pieces, and he all falls apart, and then the pieces all turn into individual Luffys, and then they, like, you know, morph back into his original body. If that kind of Looney Tunes crap happens, then I'm like, all right, I think that's maybe a bridge too far with it. Like, you know, Kizaru's, like, slicing up Luffy, and is like, ha 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 ha, and then he just turns back like the T-1000, just whoop. It's like, you can't beat me? And I'm like, oh, God. Like, now, here's the thing, though. I would have my problems with that, but it's not so ridiculous that might not happen. Like, if we're gonna go along with the logic with as long as Luffy's in Gear 5th, he can't die, then, like, it ties into the whole sun god thing. I mean, yeah, it's just the one downside is he can't be in that form forever, but while he's in that form, he can basically do whatever he wants. And so far we know that extends to enlarging his body,
you know, turning other things into rubber, other living things into rubber as well around him, and also allows him to basically form things out of the clouds that billow out of him, either his hair or the ribbons. He can probably do the same thing. He could probably grab the rubbery ribbons cloud around him and mold that into a giant club or something. If he really wanted to, he could probably do that. It goes along with the whole thing with like Looney Tunes, you know, old school cartoons about pulling stuff out of hammer space. That's where the term comes from. Like Bugs Bunny reaches into his pocket, which, by the way, he's a rabbit that has pockets. Yeah, exactly. And then he pulls out a giant hammer and hits Elmer Fudd with it. You know, like that's the same basic logic. Also going along with Blamenko's Devil Fruit, the pocket fruit, where he literally pulls a hammer out of his pockets because that's his power. You know, so that idea is already existing in One Piece. But I'm just saying, like, there's like, how much of a cartoony thing are we going to take with this? Like, let's say Kizaru charges up a really powerful laser and literally blows off Luffy's head with a laser attack. Just BAM! Just Luffy's head just explodes. And then, you know, Kizaru's just there like, Straw Hat, I couldn't hold back against you this time. You know that, right? And then Luffy's just, like, grabbing where his head used to be. Just, like, hold on. Just, like, kind of like, you know, like, you've seen the scene in cartoons. Kind of like, it's like, ah! Ah! And then his head just, like, just blorps back into existence. And it's just like, huh. You know, like, so, like, once again, I don't know if Oda's gonna go that direction with it, but I can kind of see it, you know, if we're already doing all the crazy wacky stuff with Gear 5th. So my point is, Luffy fighting on top of a rocket ship, moving it like Mach 2 against a man made of solid light. Solid light, that's an oxymoron. But yeah, that could totally happen. I mean, everything's on the table now with Luffy's abilities. Now, here's something else I thought of, though, and I was actually really surprised. So when this invention first appeared, I thought immediately of Kizaru, and I was back a few chapters ago when Atlas was displaying the light pressure gloves, the ability to interact with all of the holograms on the island of Egghead, like, so Atlas could, like, physically punch the giant holographic snake, or, you know, high five the other holograms walking around town. So immediately I thought of Kizaru, because it's like, oh my god, okay, Kizaru, I mean, yeah, Kizaru's made of light, and then Vegapunk literally made an invention that allows you to physically interact and punch light. So I'm like, okay, that's gonna be relevant. So I think in the video I mentioned, like, Luffy could just strap on those gloves and then fight against Kizaru, but then I started thinking, like, would Luffy even need those? Because, you know, Luffy's got really powerful armament and Conqueror's Haki at this point, enough to take down Kaido. So, yeah, Kizaru's made of light, but the same thing with Rayleigh. Like, Rayleigh was using Haki and can fight him just fine, okay? So, I don't even think Luffy or even Zoro or Sanji would even need to use the light pressure technology in order to fight against Kizaru. They have Haki on their own, okay? But then I started thinking, what about a member of the Straw Hats that does not have armament Haki, but still punches things? So, obviously, like, Nami uses her climb attack, so that's how she would fight. Brook uses a sword. You know, I thought about Jinbei, but Jinbei has really good armament Haki anyway, so he would be able just to punch Kizaru if he even managed to hit him. You know, he could do that. What about Frankie? What about Frankie? Give those light pressure gloves to Frankie. Have him put them on, you know, or some other variation therein, like, oh, here are the light pressure gauntlets or something, or like there's some battle application of these things that Vegapunk has in his storehouse or something, you know, and then, you know, he straps them on, and then, you know, Frankie's like, super! And then he goes, and then, I don't know, Luffy's fighting Kizaru or something, distracting him, and then Frankie's like, strong right, and then punches Kizaru in the back with this light pressure glove. I can't imagine how much damage it would end up doing, you know what I mean? Because the pressure gloves just allow, you know, it's kind of like cheating with Haki. It's not really Haki, it's just cheating. But, you know, you'd still be able to hit him, but how much damage would it really be able to do? Okay, you know, like, really, all that might have happened is Frankie went from being able to deal 0 damage to Kizaru to being able to deal, like, very minuscule damage to Kizaru, but it might be able to distract him. So, like, you know, Frankie punches Kizaru in the back of the head and it distracts him long enough for Luffy to use some kind of crazy Gear 5th technique, or, you know, Zoro to slice up light itself. You know, that could totally happen. It really could, all right? But yeah, so the light pressure technology is there. I thought about the other satellites, but you gotta understand that, like, since Atlas was very clearly, like, the strongest satellite, like, she was the one that embodied wrath and went around and fought things, and she still got one shot by Lucci,
then, and she had the light pressure gloves, like, even if Atlas were to be revived, and I don't think she'd be that much of a help against Kizaru, okay? I don't think Vegapunk really designed the satellites to fight. You know, they're definitely not weak, but they're definitely not on the level where they could take an Admiral, okay? Even like Shaka and Lilith, obviously Edison and Pythagoras are not intended to fight. I mean, who knows? Maybe Pythagoras and Edison will combine like Megazords because they're both robots, and like Pythagoras is like, okay, I guess it's time to use my wisdom of war, and then he Pythagoras battle mode, you know, like a bunch of cannons come out or whatever. He turns into a tank, and then Edison jumps on top of him. Let's just like, all right, merge, let's go, Edison Pythagoras tank combination, you know, something like that. And Pythagoras can turn into a tank, he can turn into a jet, he can turn into a submarine. It's like all these different variations, like weapons he could turn into. Turns into a stealth bomber to go and attack Kizaru. Like, maybe that might happen. I don't think York can fight. York's whole thing is to just eat and go to the bathroom. Shaka, maybe. Shaka and Lilith might be able to fight, but I don't think they're on that level. You know what I mean? I think in terms of raw physical strength, I'm pretty sure that Atlas was the apex of that when it came to the satellites. Obviously, Vegapunk himself can't fight. He's an old man. Maybe they can have, like, they have Vega Force 1. Maybe you can go add the photon thing, pressure gloves to the Vega Force 1 or something like that. I don't know. But, yeah, certainly this thing with Kizaru, it's going to be an interesting brawl. I want to see at least some of the Straw Hats attempt to fight him just to see how far they've gotten, and then they might escape. It might be like Luffy fights Kizaru very briefly, gets on the rocket, fires away. You know, Frankie has the photon gloves, attacks him, Zoro cuts him up, and Kizaru has to retreat, and he's like, whatever, we'll get him another day, and then that'll be it. But it's shaping up to be an interesting holiday season for the Straw Hats. Let's see where this goes. And now we were going to go to a very special episode of Porygon Facts. This is the episode that everybody was waiting for, probably.
Alright, I've beaten around the bush with this enough on Porygon Facts. Time to talk about the reason why Porygon's not allowed in the anime anymore. Alright. And also the reason why I feel bad for him, okay, and he became my favorite Pokemon. Alright. On December 16th, 1997, so it was around the Christmas season, so that just made this all the worse, episode 38 of the Pokemon anime aired in Japan. It was Electric Soldier Porygon, and it was the episode that debuted Porygon. The premise of the episode was essentially Ash and the gang arrive at the Pokemon Center in some random city, and the transferring mechanism, you know, like the Pokeballs go into the computer and they get teleported and stuff like that, that's malfunctioning. So they have to go see a guy named Dr. Akihabara. Akihabara is a district in Tokyo that has a lot of, like, anime stuff and, like, you know, otaku kind of culture and everything like that. It's the place that every anime fan has to go at least some point in their life. They have to make the trek to Akihabara. Anyway, Dr. Akihabara states that, you know, my Porygon got stolen by Team Rocket and it's wreaking havoc in cyberspace, but it's okay because he has another Porygon which Ash and the gang then team up with and go into cyberspace to fight against the other Porygon that Team Rocket has. Seems on the surface like a really solid episode. In fact, I have always really liked cyberspace kind of things. I like the old show on PBS, you know, Cyber Chase, you know, with Gilbert Gottfried and everything like that. That was a fun show. However, I never got a chance to watch Electric Soldier Porygon, nor did anybody else outside of Japan because it only aired a single time, and it never was dubbed or anything like that. Because about 20 minutes into the episode, there is a scene where Team Rocket has these missiles, these vaccine missiles that fire at Ash and his group that are riding on a Porygon. Pikachu, this is very important for the story, Pikachu, not Porygon, jumps up, uses a Thunderbolt attack, hits the missiles, they explode. What followed during this explosion effect in the anime was a sequence of red and blue lights at the exact frequency, red and blue, that caused seizures and seizure-like symptoms in about 12,000 Japanese citizens, mostly children because children were watching Pokemon at the time. Yeah. So, if anything else, it is a animation oversight, okay? Taking this beyond, like, it's Pikachu's fault, it's Porygon's fault. No, it's the animation department's fault. And as you can imagine, caused a serious problem and serious reforms in the way that animation was handled in Japan. All right? The numbers for this were that upwards of over 12,000 people suffered mild symptoms at minimum from this, such as like headaches, maybe a little bit of nausea, a little bit of dizziness. 685 children had to be taken to a hospital in ambulances. Most of them did recover while en route to the hospital. They were just mild symptoms. You know, the parents freaked out, obviously, because their kid is having, like, some severe problems, maybe dizzy or passing out or whatever. They call an ambulance, but on the way there, most of them were able to recover. 150 of those 685 were hospitalized, and 2 of them were hospitalized for greater than 2 weeks. So obviously, those 2 children had more severe reactions to, the red and blue lights and had, serious epileptic seizures. Okay. And over 12,000 had like more mild symptoms. Some of them maybe just complained of a headache, and that was it. But certainly it was a serious, serious issue, okay, that freaked a lot of people out about Pokemon. And it's just like, is this an okay anime to like show? It's causing these seizures and everything like that. I remember it was made fun of on South Park here in the States, which that might be how you, I don't know if it was, I don't think it was South Park. South Park did a Pokemon parody. I think it was The Simpsons that did this. Yeah, The Simpsons in season 8, they go to Japan. There's an episode where the Simpsons go to Japan, and while they're, like, Bart's, like, watching a show, like an anime, and he says something like, isn't this that cartoon that causes seizures or something like that? So that's how, in the West, you might have heard about the whole Porygon seizure incident back in the late 90s. But the episode was immediately pulled, and they didn't even try to do a thing where it's like, oh, we'll just remove the red and blue lights or reanimate it or just take out this entire scene and then redub it. No, the episode's gone. This is not like an issue of just like some mild censorship, like, or, the incident with like in the Safari Zone episode where Kaiser pulls out a gun, or, the scene in the beach episode where James has the inflatable breasts or anything like that. No, this is a serious issue that hospitalized a lot of children, okay? So no one's going to even like, hey, so we have this Pokemon episode. We removed all the seizures so you can have it in the English dub. Like, they're not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Okay, like there's just like no way is that ever airing ever again. It doesn't matter if you even reanimate the whole thing from scratch and you don't have any red and blue lights. That is never airing again, ever. Okay, and because of that, as an extension, Porygon is effectively banned from ever appearing in any Pokemon anime, in any episode ever again. I think he shows up in the 4th movie at the very beginning, just kind of floating in a back alley, and that's it. And I'm surprised he even got that much. The reason why that I feel bad for Porygon, though, is, as I said, he's not the one that caused the damn seizures, all right? I think what happened was, because it was the red and blue lights of the animation and the frequency that caused the seizures, and because, look at Porygon's color scheme, it's, well, more pink and blue, but red and blue, you can see it, that's what everybody focused on. So imagine being a parent and your kid is sitting down to watch an episode of Pokemon. Oh, it's adorable. Look at the little yellow mouse. Oh, they're collecting pocket monsters. Isn't that great? They're having them fight against each other, which is a little weird, but whatever. It's a kid's show, okay? So you're in the kitchen making dinner. Your kid's in there watching Pokemon like, wow, Pikachu, Porygon, this is a great episode. And then they all of a sudden have a seizure. And you, as a parent, see this thing. And you learn about how, oh, it was red and blue lights that caused the seizures. And the episode focused this Pokemon. This thing causes seizures. You just like, that's probably why everyone immediately freaked out over Porygon. He has the same color scheme, and you could argue that was probably why the animation department, even for some reason, wanted to do, because the rest of the Pokemon anime, I was going to say One Piece, the rest of the Pokemon anime does not have, like, even before this episode, did not include these red and blue flashing lights. It was only in this episode. And it was probably because whoever was animating it was like, hey, it's in cyberspace and Porygon, we should have flashing red and blue lights because it'll look cool.
Yeah, somebody definitely dropped the ball on this, and people were probably fired. I actually don't know a lot about what happened internally from this, but I'm assuming some people were probably fired from this. But yeah. Anyway, that's the story of, as it is quickly known as, the Pokemon Shock incident, and why Porygon has been forever banned from the anime. So for that reason, I feel bad for him. You know, Porygon never did anything wrong. He didn't do some kind of. It's not like Porygon had an ability like Porygon use Psy-Wave, and then Porygon Psy-Wave was red and blue flashing lights. It wasn't anything like that. It was just all Pikachu. It's okay, Porygon. You're still my favorite. Later, everybody. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.